This is day 46 of Journeying My Life online every single day until I graduate. And today, my biggest thinking has been around the idea of perfectionism. And I think perfectionism is a term that is really mislabeled on the internet. Like, a lot of people will refer to themselves as perfectionists, and it's kind of like a throwaway or arbitrary phrase for just saying you have high standards. But to be a perfectionist, what I've concluded it actually means is that you are not able to abide problems that are present and also possible improvements. And there's a difference between the two, which is that the first one is something that is not done to standard. For example, if I say, I want to do well in this exam, I'm going to do 5 practice exams. That is something that has a definite finish, right? That is, there is a done, which is I do the 5 exams and then I'm done. But for improvements, there's no definite completion, right? Like, for example, if my goal is to do well in the exam again, there is no end to which I can make myself more familiar with the material. So an example that came across my mind was for my preparation for my philosophy exam, which is in about 60 days. And it's basically like a quarter of my end of year 12 grading. And when I was thinking about revising for it, I was like, okay, generally, when I would used to practice for exams, I would set myself tasks that I think need to be done. For example, like 15 practice exams that need to be done, but I would not have an open-ended kind of top end for my understanding of the knowledge, which is like, I want to know this knowledge to the best of my ability. And as such, I would miss opportunities of learning like what I am about to do after recording this video, which is my plan is to list out every single philosopher that we've learned and then list out each of their arguments and then practice writing each of their arguments and then work out the comparisons between the relevant philosophers that talk about similar things. So for example, if Nietzsche and Socrates both talk about extending oneself or using discipline to live the best life they possibly can, then you compare the separate ideas on the same subject and then you work out the differences and the similarities so that we can answer questions like those easier. This is some kind of open-ended task that I would never have thought of a year ago or in the past, because I don't think back then I held myself to the same level of, I guess, perfectionism as I do now when it comes to kind of bigger projects. I would mostly just be focusing on getting a set number of tasks done. And I think the change in mindset around this perfectionism, or willing to go that extra mile or maybe 10 miles to get that last little bit tweaked right. First of all, I really got inspired by Alex Hormozy's books. So he talks a lot about like making the best thing possible. And he says the term like 100 golden BBs, which is like tweaking literally every single little thing to make it as good as it possibly can. And first of all, that really inspired me. And then secondly, I think the really big thing was my badminton general coaching guide. So basically over 2 years, I spent about 300 hours writing like small guides for problems that coaches usually faced. Like for example, if they didn't know how to greet students or parents properly, I'd write a little guide for that. Like for example, walk up to a new student, shake the parent's hand, make sure you introduce yourself, tell them where to put their stuff, etc., join in, etc. Okay, and then like there's like about 100 of those little things. And then I put all of these things together into a big guide. And that guide is basically like the pride and joy of my badminton business, and I think it's what sets us really apart from the other businesses, in my opinion, of course, not biased at all. But I feel like the creation of that really made me realize how much better we could be doing the things that we think are simply done. Because true perfectionism does not lie in the completion of work, but the absolute maximization of whatever you're trying to do or whatever you're trying to perfect.